There are stories not told in words, but in repetitions. They hide in the invisible corridors of life. A meeting that returns with a different face. An opportunity that appears and vanishes, always with the same ending. A silence that returns. An abandonment that reappears. An accident that insists on crossing the path. These events, so ordinary and yet so unsettling, seem to form an invisible script, a secret script that writes our lives while we believe we are improvising. And then the inevitable question arises. Is each choice, each relationship, each loss, only the fruit of chance? Or is there a hidden script, a silent text written somewhere outside of time, which only reveals itself when we step onto the stage of life? On the surface, we breathe, decide, try. But beneath it all, something seems to pull us back to the same curve, the same tone, the same lesson. As if life were less a straight line and more a circle, insisting on bringing us back to the starting point. Ancient cultures already suspected this. The Chinese spoke of the red thread of destiny, which binds people beyond the limits of chance. The Greeks told of the Moirai, the invisible weavers who spun the thread of life. And in indigenous traditions, repetition was seen as a spiritual message not yet understood. Today, we call them patterns. They called it destiny. But perhaps it is something more, not random, but encoded. The feeling is disconcerting. You recognize the gaze of someone you've never met. You fall in love with the same wound in different bodies. You step into the same trap, even though you already know the consequences. These stories are not new. They are recycled stories, which the universe seems determined to reenact until the actor awakens. Think of your life as a stage. The plot changes, the costumes change, the faces change. But the background melody remains the same. And what if each time that melody returns, it was an invitation? A call to notice that what repeats itself is not misfortune, but a code asking to be deciphered. The mystery lies precisely there. You don't need to invent this code, it already exists. The only task is to perceive it. But who, after all, holds the pen that writes these invisible stories? Who is the true scriptwriter behind the stage of reality? So it is with human experiences. At first glance, everything seems different. The new job, the new friendship, the new love. But look closely, and you'll notice the invisible lines of the script were drawn long before the scene began. A pattern repeats. It may appear in financial failures that resurface in cycles of years, or in relationships that begin with intensity and end with abandonment, or even in the accidents that echo earlier versions of themselves. It is not coincidence. It is a code in motion, just like fractals, geometric figures that, no matter how much they are enlarged or reduced, always reveal the same design. Our lives also repeat patterns that echo on different scales. Small stories multiply into greater narratives. And greater narratives reflect themselves in the smallest gestures. It is as if there were a repetition code, a secret, silent program inscribed in the fabric of reality, casting the same lessons in different molds. Think of someone who, in different stages of life, always attracts the same type of person. As a teenager, a controlling friend. At 20, a jealous partner. At 30, an authoritarian boss. 3 distinct stories. 3 different characters. But a single pattern vibrating in the background. Like a hidden melody that insists on being played, no matter the instrument. Ancient cultures knew this. The Hindus spoke of samskara, impressions that shape behaviors and destinies, invisible marks that follow us from life to life. The Egyptians believed certain symbols of power haunted entire lineages, repeating stories of rise and fall. Even the alchemists spoke of repetitions as signs that spiritual gold had not yet been attained. For them, nothing was chance. For us, it becomes luck, misfortune, karma, or simply coincidence. But the name hardly matters. What matters is that repetition always carries a message. Imagine a musical score. The song may change rhythm. It may gain new instruments. It may even sound happier or sadder. But the main note remains, sustaining the entire melody. That note returns, always the same, always present, until the musician chooses to replace it. So it is with the invisible script. It is the note that insists. Life may change the scenery, the actors, the costumes. But if the code is not deciphered, the same note will resound until consciousness awakens. The most unsettling truth is this. This code not only organizes our biography, it seems to shape collective events as well. Nations repeat wars. Civilizations repeat collapses. Families repeat secrets. And individuals repeat wounds they already recognize, but still do not dare to interrupt. The code is intimate and yet cosmic. It is a fractal destiny stitching together the invisible and the visible. And then the inevitable question arises. If these patterns repeat like fractals, is there a way to perceive the exact moment when the script is active? The script does not reveal itself in written words, but in signs. And these signs are everywhere. Some call them coincidence, others destiny. But the soul recognizes them as silent repetitions, as echoes whispering, "You are inside the same storyline." How do you know when an invisible script is active? Emotional déjà vu. It is not just a strange memory. It is the body saying, "I have lived this before." A conversation that carries the same tone. A place that brings the same emptiness. A glance that awakens the same wound. Cycles of pain. Different relationships, yet always the same ending. Different attempts, yet the same frustration. It feels like walking in circles inside an invisible labyrinth. Recurring encounters. Certain people return, not always with the same face, but with the same energy. Have you noticed how certain personalities take turns in your life? The critic, the betrayer, the savior, the absent one. Different characters, always playing the same role. These are signs the code is running, like a program repeating invisible lines of command. Here enters a simple yet powerful ritual, the writing of repetition. Take a sheet of paper. List 3 moments in your life when the same story happened. They may be in different areas, but with the same final feeling. Place them side by side. Look closely. What is the common note? Perhaps it is abandonment. Perhaps it is worthlessness. Perhaps it is fear. This simple writing acts like a mirror of the script, revealing that what once looked like misfortune is, in truth, a sequence. Imagine a song playing in the background. You dance. You change steps. You change partners. But the beat remains the same. That is how the code operates. It is the constant rhythm, and you so often dance without noticing. When you recognize the signs, the music is no longer invisible. And in that instant, the chance arises to interrupt the automatic step. How many times have you asked yourself, why does this always happen to me? Perhaps the answer is not in bad luck, but in the repetition of a script not yet deciphered. It is as if the soul, patient, keeps bringing back the same scene, until the protagonist chooses to respond differently. And what if these scripts were not only psychological, but cosmic? What if, Behind human repetitions, there was a language of the very matrix of reality, pressing stories forward until consciousness awakens. When we speak of invisible scripts, it is impossible not to touch the mystery of reality itself. What if the world we call real is, in truth, a vast stage, a cosmic stage, where every gesture, every encounter, every tragedy, and every blessing are guided by codes? This idea is not new. In Hindu mythology, there is the concept of Leela, the divine play. Reality is seen as a spectacle in which the cosmos itself experiments with different roles. We, the actors, believe we are our characters, forgetting that something greater waits behind the curtain. In ancient Greece, Plato spoke of the cave, where men in chains saw only projected shadows and believed those shadows to be reality. Centuries later, quantum physics would tell us something similar. Reality is not solid, but a vibrational field encoded in invisible patterns. Imagine living inside a perfect theater. The streets are scenery, the people actors. Even accidents are part of a choreography written long before you were born. You breathe, you decide, you struggle. But the backdrop remains the same, a script running in the background. This vision may feel disturbing, almost like waking from a dream and realizing everything was rehearsal. But there is also something liberating here. If life is a stage, then it is possible to change roles, to improvise, to tear the script and write a new scene. Today, information scientists describe reality as if it were digital code. Quantum particles behaving like zeros and ones. Lines of cosmic programming sustaining every movement. Long ago, the alchemists already spoke of the sacred code, a secret language that could only be read by those who crossed the veil of the ordinary world. Today we call it algorithms, equations, simulations. They called it magic. But the essence is the same. Reality appears written. And here comes the revelation that stirs the soul. If life is a cosmic stage, if we are characters in invisible scripts, perhaps our mistakes are not personal failures, but parts of a greater play. Perhaps abandonment, loss, even trauma are not just scars, but lines of the universal script repeating to push us toward consciousness. But if everything is theater, if every step is staged, then where is the true scriptwriter? Who, after all, holds the pen that writes the story of your soul? If life is a stage, if patterns are fractal, one inevitable question remains. Who writes these invisible scripts? Could it be chance, cold and impersonal? A distant god manipulating destinies like puppets? Or the soul itself, which before being born already knew the chapters it would need to cross? The truth is that multiple layers write together. Family inheritances. We do not inherit only eyes or gestures. We inherit pain, silences, secrets. Unspoken stories seep in like ghosts. Children repeat the fate of their parents. Grandchildren repeat the choices of their grandparents. It is as if blood carries not only DNA, but invisible narratives as well. The collective unconscious. Carl Jung said, "We do not carry only our own history, but also the history of humanity." Archetypal dreams. Universal symbols. Fears inherited across thousands of years. All of them writing, together, the same play with different actors. The memories of other lives. For many traditions, the scripts extend beyond a single existence. Traumas of yesterday echo in today's fears. Ancient loves return in new bodies. The soul, patient, decides to repeat until the lesson is integrated. The ancients represented this repetition with the Ouroboros, the serpent devouring its own tail. An endless cycle, where beginning and end blur together. The Ouroboros is the perfect symbol of invisible scripts, stories folding back upon themselves, with no apparent exit. But there is a hidden secret within this symbol. The Ouroboros does not merely consume the tale, it also renews itself in the act. Each repetition is both prison and possibility of rebirth. Imagine life as a book you find on the shelf of existence. When you open it, you realize some pages are already written in deep letters, but others remain blank, waiting for your pen. The mystery is this: to what extent is the book already finished, and to what extent does it depend on you? Perhaps the scriptwriter is not a single one. Perhaps it is a chorus. Your lineage, your unconscious, your soul across different times, and the very matrix of reality, weaving it all into a cosmic tapestry. The script is not a sentence. It is a setting. It is the point of departure, but never the final prison. And then arises the question that echoes as a challenge. If the serpent bites its own tail, is there an escape? Is it possible to break the circle, to shatter the Ouroboros, to interrupt the repetition? The circle of the Ouroboros seems inescapable. Inherited patterns, ancient wounds, invisible scripts. Everything seems to push the human being back to the same point. But there is a breach, and this breach is simpler and deeper than most imagine: the present moment. The instant you breathe with awareness, the circle is interrupted. Automatic life pauses. The serpent, for a second, releases its own tail. Ancient cultures knew this. In Hinduism, breath is called prana, vital energy. In the Hebrew tradition, the word for spirit also means breath. In Christianity, the Holy Spirit manifests as breath, as wind. For indigenous peoples, deep breathing was a way to call back the fragmented soul. The secret is that breathing is not only biological. It is a portal. Each inhalation brings you back to the present. Each exhalation dissolves the weight of the past. Try now a small ritual. Close your eyes. Inhale deeply through the nose, counting to 4. Hold the air for a moment, as if holding the thread of time. Exhale slowly through the mouth, counting to 6. Repeat 3 times. Notice what happens. The mind slows, the body anchors, the automatic script weakens. This simple act of 3 conscious breaths is like an invisible cut in the cycle. A reminder that not everything is already written. Imagine each breath as a flame lit in the midst of darkness. The repetitive scenes collapse. The voices of the past grow silent. For a moment, there is only you and the now. It is within this now that the new can be born. It is in the space between one breath and the next that the soul finds the opening to rewrite its own story. Is conscious breathing too small a gesture to interrupt centuries of inheritance? Perhaps. But the universe is made of small breaches. The sun rises through a thread of light. A river begins with a single drop. And a new life begins with one breath. But breath, by itself, is only the pause. To rewrite the story, it takes more than interruption. It takes choosing new words. And how is that done? Where is the pen capable of writing differently? The breath interrupts. It creates the pause, the empty space where the circle can open. But interruption is not enough. It is necessary to write again. Here lies the forgotten secret. The soul carries within it the invisible pen of creation. Most people have forgotten this. They live as actors following old scripts, without realizing they are also authors. Each conscious choice, however small it may seem, is a stroke of that pen. No, spoken where before the automatic yes was repeated. A different step when the road seemed already marked. A gesture of self-love instead of the cycle of abandonment. The soul does not write with ink, but with attention and decision. The present is the paper. The heart is the quill. And consciousness is the golden ink engraving the new storyline. Imagine yourself standing on a stage. The script is in your hands, filled with old notes. You can keep reciting the same lines, or you can tear the pages and improvise. The universe, silent, waits. The audience is not made of strangers, but of your own versions, awaiting the courage to see something different unfold. Here is a simple exercise in rewriting. Take the pattern you identified earlier, the one that repeated itself in 3 different moments. Write down how the story always ends. Now, write an alternative version, even if it seems improbable. Repeat this new version aloud, as if rehearsing a line for the next act. This symbolic gesture, almost childlike in its simplicity, works like a programming key. For the unconscious understands stories, not concepts. And by creating an alternative narrative, you give the inner script the possibility of a new line. The soul is not imprisoned by destiny. It only forgets that it knows how to write. It is like a writer who dropped her pen to the ground and spent centuries believing she could only recite the stories of others. But the pen never disappeared. It was always in the heart, waiting for the moment to be reclaimed. And when this pen is held again, something changes. The eyes gain brightness, the voice gains strength, life begins to listen. For the universe does not respond to fear, but to the clarity of one who dares to write differently. But then a dilemma arises. How to distinguish what comes from the old script disguised as novelty, and what is truly born of the soul, free, fresh, never written before. To rewrite, it is not enough to dream of a new storyline. Discernment is needed, for the old script is cunning. It disguises itself as novelty, presents itself as opportunity, dresses in different clothes, but beneath it all, it is always the same note. And how to tell the difference? The secret lies in the mirror of reality. Everything that happens outside is a reflection of what pulses within. The one who abandons reveals the inner fear of being left behind. External betrayal reflects the intimate doubt about one's own worth. The lack of recognition out there echoes the difficulty of seeing oneself within. Life is a mirror, a constant mirror test. And when something returns again and again, it is not punishment, it is a sign. A small ritual can reveal this truth. Stand before an ordinary mirror, look into your own eyes, and affirm in a clear voice, I am not my pattern, I am the observer. This simple act separates the reflection from the observer. It reminds consciousness that you are not the mask, not the repetition, not the wound. You are the one who sees, and the one who sees can choose to write differently. Imagine that every person who crosses your path is a walking mirror. The arrogant one reflects your hidden fear of being small. The critic reflects your inner judgment. The loving one reflects the part of you that already knows how to care. And each time you see not only the surface but the hidden reflection, something happens. The script loses power, for it exists only as long as it is lived unconsciously. The moment it is seen, it shatters. This is the power of the mirror. It does not only show distortions, it reveals hidden truths. Life does not err in choosing the characters around you. Each one is a perfect piece of a cosmic puzzle pointing precisely to the lesson that must awaken. If you run, it returns. If you resist, it insists. Until one day, you dare to look straight at it and say, I see you, but I am not you. But then the inevitable question arises. When the mirror finally breaks, when the repeated images dissolve, what arises in their place? The emptiness frightens, but what if emptiness is, in truth, the very beginning of everything? When the old script breaks, the first impulse is fear. Fear of the void. Because what remains after repetition is a space without references, a ground that does not exist, a blank page. The human being fears the void as much as death. He prefers familiar pain to the absence of form. That is why many return to the old script. It is painful but familiar. It is the cycle of the serpent biting its own tail, not because there is no escape, but because escape requires enduring silence. But the ancients knew the void is not absence. It is womb. In Hindu tradition, Shunyata is the fertile void, the matrix of all forms. For the Taoists, Wu Wei is born of the void, the non-action that generates all actions. For Christian mystics, the desert is not punishment, but the space where the divine voice can finally be heard. The void is the womb of creation. It is the moment before the first word. It is the silence before the first note. Imagine being in a completely dark room where there are no objects, no sounds, no points of reference. At first, there is panic, but little by little, something shifts. The heart finds a calmer rhythm. The ears perceive subtle sounds, the mind begins to quiet. In nothingness, there is space for everything. The same happens with the soul. When the script dissolves, there is a chance to hear, perhaps for the first time, the original breath of creation. To access this creative void, there is a simple yet profound exercise. Sit in silence for 5 minutes. No music, no distractions. Each time a thought arises, just let it pass without fighting. Imagine you are facing a blank page. Allow yourself to simply be there without writing anything. This exercise may seem small, but it opens a rare space, the space where the new can be born. The void is painful because it takes away certainties, but it is also liberating because it gives back possibility. Each time a script breaks, the universe offers you a blank page. The question is, will you fill it with the same words as always, or will you dare to write something that has never existed? And what if the void is not the end, but the blank page of your soul? And what if, within that silent space, the entire universe is waiting only for your first word? The void is not the end. It is the beginning. And in that beginning, the soul rediscovers what always belonged to it, the ability to write its own story. For a long time, we believed we were only actors. We recited memorized lines. We followed ancient gestures. We accepted repeated endings. But the truth is that we were always authors as well. We forgot this, and forgetting trapped us in cycles. Now, with the pen in hand, the void becomes a stage. Each choice made with awareness is a line written on the parchment of reality. Each new gesture, however small, is a deviation from the old code. Each act of self-love, each silence respected, each boundary placed, each seed planted, all of these are new sentences, unwritten chapters. Imagine that each person is a living library. Some books are already written, stories of childhood, of family, of pain. But on the highest shelves, there are volumes still empty. And these volumes can only be written by you here and now. The fire that seemed to destroy reveals, in truth, space for new words. The stage that seemed to replay only repetitions opens to improvisations never before dreamed. The mirror that shattered gives way to a horizon without frames. And on that horizon, something new, something unique, something yours. If you wish to seal this new beginning, try one last ritual. Take a blank sheet of paper. At the top, write, "My next chapter begins like this." Allow yourself to write a short sentence, no matter what it is. Read it aloud, as if declaring it to your own soul. This symbolic act is not merely psychological. It is a way of telling the universe, "I accept the pen. I choose to write." It is not about erasing the past, but integrating it. Every pain, every repetition, every cycle serve to bring you here. Without them, perhaps there would not be enough awareness to recognize the power of writing. The soul does not repeat by accident. It repeats until we awaken. And when we awaken, we realize we are not prisoners of the script. We are the authors who had forgotten their own signature. Remember, the script only changes when you dare to write differently. The universe does not demand perfection, only presence. The pen is already in your hands. The page is already before you. And the first stroke of a new destiny can begin now, in this very instant, with the simple decision to believe that the author has always been you.